So our next presenters are Erin Freed and Josh Morris, and they're going to talk to us about climate resiliency for people and wildlife on Capitol Hill. So Erin and Josh, take it away.
Thank you. I'm Erin Freed, she, her pronouns. I'm with the Capitol Hill Eco District, and welcome to Improving Climate Resiliency for People and Wildlife in Capitol Hill.
And I'm Josh. I'm with the Seattle Audubon Society. I use he, him pronouns. Next slide, please. To get us started, I wanted to introduce you to the Rufous hummingbird. The males, like this one shown here, are bright orange on the back and belly and have vivid iridescent red throats. These are tiny little birds, weighing less than a nickel. Despite their small size, Rufous hummingbirds make one of the longest migratory journeys of any bird in the world. These birds feed on nectar, and their migration route follows the flowers. You can see their elliptical migration pattern in the animation on the right. They move up the coast in late winter and arrive in the Pacific Northwest around the time red flowering currant reaches peak bloom. A few will breed in the city, making nests of moss and spider webs, laying jelly bean-sized eggs, and feeding insects to the chicks that eventually hatch. In mid-July, they'll all start heading back south, this time following a highland route, full of summer flowers through the Cascades, Sierra, and Rocky Mountains. Climate change threatens these amazing little birds. Earlier springs, longer summers, changes in rainfall, and other impacts affect the timing of blooms, insect emergence, and animal movements. However, not all species are responding to climate change at the same speed or in the same ways, and this can lead to mismatches, where blooms peak before hummingbirds arrive, for example. Next slide, please. The Rufous hummingbird is extremely vulnerable to mismatches. To the slide with the yellow map, please. One more back. Thank you. The Rufous hummingbird is extremely vulnerable to mismatches and other climate impacts. The National Audubon Society projects that nearly all of the Rufous hummingbird's current range in Washington, shown here in yellow, will be lost under a 3-degree warming scenario. Next slide. The red here shows that projected loss. Sadly, the Rufous hummingbird is not alone. At least 388 other North American bird species appear to be similarly imperiled by climate change. In cities, we may be able to improve the climate resiliency for some vulnerable species. Since urban habitats can be planned, managed, and monitored intensely, we can thoughtfully incorporate vegetation into gardens, parks, and right-of-way to provide abundant year-round resources for wildlife. We can also enhance connectivity between existing green spaces to facilitate movement and access to resources. Next slide. And that's the idea behind the Capitol Hill Connections project, a map of which is on the next slide. Yes, this nearly 2-mile-long project area extends from Seattle University to the south, shown on the left in this map, to Volunteer Park on the right. Over 100 bird species occur within this area, along with unknown hundreds of other plant, animal, and fungi species. We're working to not only plan for habitat enhancements, but to build community and foster personal connections with neighborhood nature too. But this is Capitol Hill. There are a lot of constraints working in such a densely populated and urbanized part of the city. What can we actually do?
Next slide, please. Thank you. When we're in crisis, we tend to adopt a scarcity mindset, and that makes innovation difficult. When it comes to climate change, we might notice that green spaces are limited, they feel crowded, and face competing demands from multiple users. We might be frustrated that new development puts pressures on existing green spaces, removing tree canopy and destroying existing wildlife habitat. We would also know that new development makes space for more people, which is also in our values. Moving to a mindset of abundance and focusing on what we have versus what we don't, we can see new possibilities. We could consider the right-of-way as a place for expansion, which we're doing through the Capitol Hill Connections project. If we look at the streetscape, there's lots of places to add habitat. Planting strips offer opportunities for accessible, plentiful gardening in lots of forms. Kitchen gardens, rain gardens, and wildlife gardens can all add a bit of sanctuary for birds and people. Next slide, please. This kind of connectivity facilitates movement for birds and other pollinators as well as people. It offers opportunities for neighbors and visitors to feel a sense of invitation. It can signal belonging and build relationships within and between communities. Making space for gardens and planting strips helps build food security, leveraging open space for folks who don't have yards of their own. There are currently only 75 individual pea patch plots in Capitol Hill, a neighborhood of more than 30,000 people, 80% of whom are renters. And of course, moving through and lingering in a habitat corridor, like the one we're envisioning, supports physical and mental health, so long as we know we are welcome and feel safe. Increased habitat meets needs for birds and other pollinators, contributing to overall ecosystem health, while yielding many benefits for people in the short and long term. As urban dwellers, one of the most important things we can do to address the climate crisis is to strengthen our individual relationship with the natural ecology around us.
Next slide, please. And a great way to do that is by participating in the City Nature Challenge. Between April 30th and May 1st, people all around the world will be observing and documenting the nature of their cities. Your observations can help us in our work too. If you visit the project area and share observations through iNaturalist, we'll be notified and we'll be better able to describe the current state of biodiversity within the project area and potentially to assess how or if that changes over time. Erin just dropped a link to sign up in the chat, and we'd be grateful for your participation. And of course, if you have any questions, our email addresses are on the next slide. Feel free to get in touch at any time. Thank you.